most people know about Guitar Hero. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what is Guitar Hero and what are the successful metrics that it hit?
Sure, yes. So Guitar Hero 1 was released all the way back in 2005. Seemed like ages ago. It was released on the PlayStation 2. And so it's from that era. It was within 2 years, by 2007, Guitar Hero 3 had become the biggest, most popular game in the world. So 2007, 2008, for 2 years straight, it was the most popular game in the world. It was the second game in the history of video games to cross $1 billion in sales. The first was World of Warcraft, which did it, I think, 1 or 2 years before Guitar Hero. And then a year after, Guitar Hero 3 crossed $1 billion. I think Call of Duty crossed $1 billion. So it was for that era. It was not only a very popular video game, but it was also one of the first video games that kind of crossed a wide swath of the population that never even played video games. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, parents, a lot of women, a lot of folks who had not really played the most popular games up until then were kind of console shooters, RPGs. Mm-hmm. Guitar Hero, being a very casual music game, introduced video gaming to a large population, introduced the concept of Guitar Hero parties. And so it was a game that had a broad reach, mm-hmm. Both in terms of market share as well as in terms of just people playing it.
That's actually really interesting. That reminds me of, before they historically they said, oh, people couldn't run so fast in a sprint, like this time was impossible. And then someone broke that record, and then shortly after someone else broke that record. Why do you think in the gaming industry, just no game could reach that $1 billion, and then suddenly one did, and then a year after another did? Do you feel like it's the market that became more mature for it, or games just became better for that?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I remember that year in 2007 when the finance department, Activision had acquired us in 2006. And then in our first full year, the finance group had done a roll-up of what they forecasted the year would be. And it was like 700 and something million. And I think at that time, no game on console had crossed even 600. And I said, if we submit this, they're going to think we're smoking pot. Like, nobody does 700 million. And looking back on it, I think there were a couple of unique qualities to some of the games that were able to cross $1 billion first. So World of Warcraft crossed $1 billion, I think, because they had not just a game to sell, but they had a monthly subscription on top of the game. Mm-hmm. So they had an extra sort of revenue stream that came from the monthly subscriptions. Guitar Hero, I thought, was because we sold this big bundle by the time we got to Guitar Hero 3 that was selling for $100. So the unit price was a lot higher, and then a lot of people would go out and buy a second controller to play. And so I think the fact that we were able to take our average sales price per customer up much higher than other video games allowed us to cross $1 billion. And it was a couple of years later, but as the console install base got bigger, other games were able to cross $1 billion just selling software. But the first ones, I thought, really relied on something different in their business model to achieve that.
Interesting, because that very reason that got you over $1 billion with a higher price, the bigger bundle, is also what prevented you from getting funding in the beginning, and
yes.
Gave you a lot of troubles, right?
Yes.
And it's just the industry, it's hard for industries to adapt the newer model that could be milestone breaking, but they're just so new, they just don't want to touch it.
Yes.
I think for World of Warcraft, if someone just went to raise funding from an investor with World of Warcraft, probably very difficult. It had to be Blizzard, who already did a lot of successful titles, and they just wanted to create their dream.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And there's I think initially always a lot of skepticism. When World of Warcraft came out, people questioned, like, would people pay subscription fees? Our game looked different than other people's games, and people thought, like, you have this massive box, a retailer's going to put this on the store shelves. Will people pay a higher price because you have this controller? And so there were always a lot of questions, and a lot of these answers were unknowable to people who were just looking at past sales data, because the past sales data is kind of a backwards-looking indicator, not a forwards-looking indicator. So I think with any of these breakthroughs that happened in the industry, it required something that challenged conventional thinking, a lot of skepticism around the product, around the business models. You know, in a lot of ways, that gave us an opportunity to do this because other people chose not to because you know they were looking at the sales data and saying like this will never work. Whereas we were, in many ways, kind of just looking and talking to our fans, and we knew that there would be a market for this. And you know, we didn't know it would be $1 billion, but we thought there would be a market for this.
Yeah.